Hi, Jerry with Boater Input, and welcome to the second of my series called Conversations, where I sit with people in the boating industry to talk about various topics that may be of interest to boaters. Today's topic is on the future of boating, and I have a very special guest today, someone who I greatly admire and respect and consider to be just an outstanding leader. Dr. Thom Dammrich was the president of the National Marine Manufacturers Association between 1999 and 2019. And during that time, I personally saw him transform that association from kind of a quiet, to play kind of a quiet supporting role to taking a lead position in bringing boat engine manufacturers together behind a common cause, common purpose to grow boating and promote the boating lifestyle, something that had not been done collaboratively beforehand. And my role, I worked extensively with Thom and more specifically his team during many of those early years to do a lot of the background research and help with the strategic plan that culminated with the launch of the Discover Boating program, something that is still ongoing today. So in today's discussion, we're going to talk about the state of boating and some challenges and opportunities for boaters going forward. So with that, I would like to say welcome to the person who has more initials after his name than anyone else that I know, Dr. Thom Dammrich.
Well, thank you, Jerry. I'm really delighted to be with you. As you mentioned, we did a lot of work together over the early years of Discover Boating, and it's been a while, so I'm really delighted to be with you again.
Thank you again for taking time. And I think we did a lot of good work, but there's more work to be done, which will be the crux of a lot of my questions here today. So, lately you and I have been corresponding quite a bit about how some of the factors that are affecting boating today, and chief among them is this whole cost and affordability issue. Now, back when we worked together 20 years ago to help grow boating, cost was a factor then, but not to the extent that it is today. Why do you suppose that is? Why do you believe that cost and affordability are a big factor nowadays?
Well, Jerry, just reading the news and listening to all the politicians, I mean, affordability is an issue for Americans in general across the board. You go to the grocery store, affordability is an issue. So I think in the boating industry in the past, it really had more to do with the cost of ownership. Today, the price of a boat is a bigger factor than it was 20 or 25 years ago. I mean, if you look at just in the last 7 or 8 years, we've gone from a situation where the average price of a new boat was 16% less than the median income of Americans. And today, or actually in 2023, the average price of a new boat was 11% more than the median income. So it's the price of that new boat is getting unaffordable. And and we've seen the average age of a first time boat buyer has increased from 40 when we started working on all of this to or 47 rather to 60 today. And I think that's part of a long-term aging trend in our country. In 1980, the average age of an American was 30. Today, it's 39.
Yeah, so that's a very interesting statistic of how the price of boats relates to the median household income, and so that certainly makes it so that boating is just not attainable for more and more people. But is it just about the cost of boats, or do you suspect that the problem is even broader than that?
Well, one of the things I've been thinking about lately, the bedrock of the boating industry has always been the middle class. And that has the broad ownership of boats in our society has been unique in the world. In Europe, in Asia, other parts of the world, boating is predominantly a recreational activity of the wealthy. Here in the U.S., it was, attainable for middle class Americans. And we're seeing a hollowing out of the middle class. In fact, Pew Research has shown that, in 1980, 61% of adults were in the middle class. Today, we have 50% of adults in the middle class. 20% of the middle class has disappeared in the last 30 years. And that trend is continuing. And now half of those people moved down into the lower incomes, and half of them moved up into the higher incomes. So, those who moved up into the higher incomes, you know, still are able to continue to buy boats, but that howling out of the middle class, I think, has been a huge issue. Um, you know, we talked about the age of a first-time boat buyer. Average age of a first-time home owner has increased from 28 years old in 1995 to 38 years old today. And we're seeing that people are reaching major life milestones later in life. They're marrying later. They're having kids later, buying their first home later, buying their first boat later, probably buying fewer boats because they bought their first boat later. So I think this is one of the major things that's contributing to the problem.
So it's a more systemic issue than just boats alone. And, one of the things that's really fascinating with what you just discussed there is, I know from my research over the years, a couple of the things that we always saw that was consistent with people who buy boats is they tend to be married 85% of the time or more and own a home. Those are kind of prerequisites before someone steps up to buying a boat. And as you just described, those things are occurring later. So it's naturally, it's going to be obviously putting off the purchase of a boat until those other life milestones are met.
Now, at the other end of the spectrum, we are living longer and we're living healthier longer. So the fact that people are still buying boats in their 60s and 70s is a positive thing, though.
Okay, so there might still be a boat or two left for me in the future, is what you're saying, I think. I like that.
I think so. I think so.
All right, well, great. Well, you and I both see those statistics that are published periodically that talk about the sales trends for boating overall on different types of boats. Are there certain products, are there certain segments of boats or boaters that you think will do better than others or worse than others, given this kind of affordability issue that we're talking about?
So that's an interesting question, Jerry. Over the years, we've always talked about the boating industry. But in fact, and I came to this realization many years ago, but in fact, we have several very small industries that we kind of pull together and call it the boating industry. And it is the boating industry, but there's a freshwater fishing industry, there's a pontoon industry, there's a saltwater fishing industry, a cruiser industry, a super yacht industry. And what they all have in common is that people use them to enjoy time on the water, but the people who buy them have very different demographics, very different reasons maybe for buying them. And so because of the shift we're seeing, howling out of the middle class, people moving up and down, the segments, upward, I'll call it the premium segments of the industry, have continued to do pretty well relative to the other segments. And if we continue to see this trend of people moving out of the middle class and half of them moving up and half of them moving down, the more premium segments are going to continue to do well. The large offshore saltwater fishing boats, the super yacht industry, and the cruiser industry maybe. And I think I think the freshwater fishing industry, the small aluminum boats that are relatively inexpensive, can continue to do well. But I think there's some of the segments in the middle that ought to be concerned.
Right, like the kind of the traditional fiberglass 21-foot runabout, those kind of things, maybe more of a stretch for people, given the issues you discussed with the hollowing out of the middle class. And you're absolutely right about it. It's really a collection of a lot of industries. And I mean, I've heard early in my career someone describe it as it's a good analogy is it's like looking at everything from motorcycles to semi trucks in the automotive side is the equivalent of the different segments of the boating industry. We got just such a different variety there. And so it does make it's not just one unique challenge, but there are a lot of different segments. So that's important. That's interesting. Now, for many people who may be watching this, they'd be thinking, oh, okay, the boating industry, may be retreating a bit, but I have my boat. What is it to me? That's no big deal. Doesn't concern me. In your opinion, what are the ramifications if to a current boat owner if the industry continues on this downward trend?
Well, so let's look at the positives and the negatives, and maybe these aren't negatives; they're just realities. But I think if the volumes of new boats continues to decline, and maybe doesn't have to decline a lot, we'll begin to see more consolidation of manufacturers and more consolidation of dealers. Uh, but we've got 10 or 11 million existing boaters. That is a huge installed base of boaters. So, marinas, companies that are selling parts and accessories to the consumer for their boats. I think they're all going to continue to do very well. In fact, that 10 to 11 million installed base is also going to provide customers for new boats because there will be some in that base that continue to move up into a new boat, and so I think we've got a built-in supply here or built-in demand here for a while. But to grow, we're going to have to attract new boaters, some first-time boaters, and we're not doing that very effectively right now.
Okay, yeah. So you're saying is this is a lot of it's boating, and the impacts are not going to be felt anytime soon for people who are already in it because it's already a very big critical mass of boaters who are out
Yes,
there.
yes.
Okay, well, one of the things is as the price of boats continues to get out, out of reach for more and more people, there's going to be obviously a natural shift towards used boat, and there's always been a big used boat market. But are there any other alternatives to owning a boat that you anticipate maybe growing to kind of help fill that void, fill that desire to get on the water?
So, Jerry, boat clubs are becoming more and more popular. I think Freedom Boat Club, for example, has grown to over 400 locations, and boat rentals. There's peer-to-peer boating, so there are opportunities to people to get out on the water and go boating without owning a boat. And I think that we're going to continue to see, strong interest in boat clubs and boat rentals, uh, which have been and will continue to be successful. I own a boat. I have a friend who's a member of a boat club, and I gotta say, we have pretty close to the same annual expenses, but he didn't have to invest $80,000 up front to buy the boat. So
Or tow a vehicle, or worry about storage?
that's right, right. It's all taken care of. You pay for gasoline like the boat owner does, uh, but you don't have to maintain the boat. You don't have to insure the boat. You don't have to store the boat. You don't have any of the uh, I don't want to say problems, but you don't have any of the
Hassle boat maintenance.
hassle. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's one of the things that I've actually studied towards the end of your time at the NMMA was on boat clubs, and one of the things that we saw there is that for many people, like you were saying there, that the cost of being in a club is maybe the same, or sometimes even less than owning a boat when you factor everything in. And for people, a lot of people gives them a chance to experiment with a lot of different boats. And so for people who are thinking of getting in boating, not sure what kind of boat's right for them, there's some advantages that way. And then as you mentioned too, you have the other benefit too on the other end, which is you don't have the maintenance or hassle of boat ownership too. You just jump in your boat, go, return the keys when you're done, and you're good. So for a lot of people, that's a very attractive option.
Yeah. Jerry, one of the things that I just want to throw in here is we talk about, the price, the cost, the, the boat ownership getting out of reach. I think one of the other factors impacting all that is just the volume of boats, new boats that we produce. The auto industry produces 16 million new cars a year. We produce 150,000 new boats a year. That's 2 days of auto production. And so it's difficult for the boating industry to get any kind of scale of economies or economies of scale in the production process. And I talked to one manufacturer who was producing 1,000 boats a year. He said, "You know how many of those boats are exactly alike? Two. There's the lack of volume and the lack of economies and scale is also an issue that impacts pricing and cost of
I'm
boats.
glad you brought that up because so many people don't understand why the cost of boats, because they equate it to their automobiles. And so why are boats are so darn expensive? But you just put your finger on exactly what the problem is. And it is that scale. I started my career in the boating industry with Mercury Marine. And I can tell you that's a very capital intensive business. It takes a lot of money to build a tooling, and you've got all these different family of engines, maybe 10 to 15 horsepower, 20 to 25, 30 to 40. And you invest millions of dollars in that tooling that you can only spread across a small number of units. And so it's actually one of those things where, especially on the engine side, unless you hit a certain volume, you lose a lot of money. You have to have a fairly sizable volume before you actually make money. And so you have to spread those costs across whatever units. And so that scale does impact the pricing. And it's why, people try to equate the price of boats versus other things. It's really not a fair comparison for the point that you just made.
Yeah.
Now, we all know that AI is affecting all aspects of our life. I mean, it's affecting me with my research business. It certainly affects what I do from a content creation standpoint. And I suspect that boating is no exception. In what ways do you anticipate that AI will affect boating and boat ownership in the future?
So I am pretty optimistic about the impact of AI on boating. And I think there's two potential impacts. One is uh, AI is going to dramatically increase productivity, and if boat manufacturers, they make the hull in the deck, but essentially they buy all the parts and they're assemblers. So they're designers and assemblers of boats. And so if their suppliers, who are also plagued by low volumes that they're selling into the boating industry, but if they can have dramatic increase in productivity through the use of AI, perhaps we can stop the rise in cost of new boats and maybe even decrease the price of new boats through these increases in productivity. The other thing I think is a real positive is that with the increases that will come, increase in productivity that I believe will come from artificial intelligence, I think we may see a move to a 4-day work week. When manufacturing was, when we were seeing the vast increases in productivity in agriculture and then manufacturing, we went from a 6-day standard work week to a 5-day standard work week in the first half of the 20th century. There is legislation today from several senators and congressmen to, to mandate a 32-hour work week with no reduction in pay. And with the increase in productivity, if I can produce as much value for you in less time, I shouldn't be worth less. So, if we move to a 4-day work week, imagine the impact that would have on increased leisure time and increased time to go boating. And I think could have a dramatic positive impact.
Well, you're absolutely right. The two things that really affect boat ownership are discretionary time and discretionary money. And so I can see how if we were having a more condensed work week, that would certainly be a positive for the industry. Um, anyway, so I just want to kind of wrap up. We've been talking a lot about the kind of current state of the industry and some challenges at present. Now I want to kind of take a kind of a forward look in some other areas as well. Besides cost, what are some other challenges that you foresee that could impact boat ownership and boating in the future?
Well, certainly government regulation and government actions seem to have the greatest impact on how we use our boats sometimes. So, for example, in saltwater fishing, until recently, in the Gulf of Mexico, there was a 3-day season on red snapper. We got some changes. We got state management of those fisheries in the Gulf, and now there's a 125 to 165-day season. If you're going to spend $1 million or more dollars on a boat to go fishing in offshore fishing, you want to use it more than 2 days to fish for red snapper. So, Ben Special from Yamaha estimated that when we moved from a 3-day season to 125 to 175-day season in the Gulf, depending on the state, that new saltwater fishing boat sales increased 4%. So right now we're seeing the same thing in the South Atlantic. We have a 2-day season for red snapper in the South Atlantic, but the 4 states in the South Atlantic fishery area have just applied for state management of those fisheries and will increase the number of days from 40, to 40 or 60 days a year fishing, which is going to make owning an offshore fishing boat much more desirable. We see it on the inland lakes with some of the ski and wakeboard boats, where homeowners are trying to shut down the use of ski and wakeboard boats because the wake creates erosion. And so there are constantly challenges like that that the industry works with boaters to and anglers to find solutions to that are good for boating and good for the country.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that makes perfect sense. I mean, one of the things that I did a video recently on why I think the industry is declining and why people aren't getting into boating. And one of the key things is, you've got the cost on one side. The other side of the balance is how much you enjoy using your boat and how often you get to use it. And so you kind of speaking specifically to that, utilization aspect. And so, yeah, if you can't use your boat very often, it's kind of hard to justify, the purchase price. So it makes a lot of sense there.
Yeah.
And then finally, what are some things that you foresee that might make boating better or easier in the future?
So I think the industry is having great success in opening up saltwater fisheries, in finding solutions with homeowners on lakes relating to wake. We're addressing the issues. 25 years ago when I came into the industry, personal watercraft were a major issue. They're not an issue today anymore because the industry has worked with the users to use the product responsibly, and the issues went away. So I think the industry is very effective at finding solutions to things that keep people off the water. And again, I think that with the advances in AI, if we can see some reduced costs due to increase in productivity, and we can see more leisure time created by these increases in productivity, that AI, as I've said, could be boom time for boating.
Yeah. Well, that's encouraging to hear that. I like the sound of a shorter work week. I mean, I've reduced it this year to 6 days a week, and so hopefully I'm making baby steps here.
There you go. There you go.
Well, anyway, hey, Thom, thank you so much for your time today and great discussion. And before we go, I want to mention to everybody out there that since his time as the president of the NMMA, Thom has been serving on a number of different boards and assisting companies with a lot of their strategic planning, mostly through his association with the Global Marine Business Advisors Network. So I will post his contact information in the video description in case any of you are interested in his services. So with that, I'd like to say again, thank you, Thom, for your time today and for that very interesting discussion. And thanks to all of you out there who are watching us.
Thank you, Jerry. Good to be with you.